name's Chip Pugh, and this is my wife, Nicole, and we want to welcome you back into our home as we're talking about what it means to live our lives together on mission. Now, that concept of together on mission, think about that. We are being a team in our home, in our family, in our marriage, on mission together. And remember, what we mean by on mission is to follow Jesus' lead and practice his ways.
So before we jump into this session, hopefully you all had a good experience writing your together story. We hope that went well and that you had the opportunity to discuss that with each other after you wrote those down to sort of reflect and remember those significant moments that you had as a family that make you you. And that you can take that to move ahead into these next sessions as kind of your groundwork. So we always think it's really valuable that God encourages us to look back so that we can move forward together.
Yeah, so in this session, what we're going to talk about is to speak your purpose. So, speak your purpose is the first of the skills of Jesus. So, when we say follow his lead and practice his ways, what we mean is, are we living in the skills of Jesus? Jesus went everywhere while he was on this earth speaking his purpose. He said, I am the way. He said, I am the truth. He said, I am the light of the world. And he turned and looked at his followers, and he also spoke purpose into them. He said, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. So if we're going to follow Jesus' lead and practice his ways, we then also would speak our purpose. But let's think about, what do we mean by purpose?
When we speak our purpose, we're really wanting to emphasize speaking into ourselves, speaking into those that are in our home and in our family, because there's a whole lot of power in speaking. When we say things out loud, even if we don't really believe them entirely, we can start to kind of fill up and be empowered with those truths. So for us, a great example is for our kids. Our kids need to be spoken into a lot because they're not at a place yet where they've developed confidence and self-assurance and like a deeper understanding of who they are. So when we speak into them and we encourage them and say, you can do these things, you're loved, you're brave, things like that, that has a lot of power for them. And so when we create our purpose, we want to speak our purpose so that we can really have that infused in us.
Yeah, and if we're a team, we're going to have different roles, unique giftings, different assignments within that team. We are a sports family. We like to think about teams when it comes to athletics. And when we think about that, we think about different positions on the team. A quarterback, a wide receiver, defensive back. They have different roles on a football team or on a basketball team, or whatever it may be. And your team has different roles. We want to speak that purpose into each other, into ourselves, so that we can be most effective, follow Jesus' lead, practicing his ways. When marriage and family were created, we actually see that God wired us to speak purpose. If we go back to the beginning of the Bible in Genesis, we're going to see this in the creation story. Let's read Genesis 2:18-25.
Then the Lord God said, it is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him. Now out of the ground the Lord had formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heavens, and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever the man called every living creature, that was its name. The man gave names to all livestock, and to the birds of the heavens, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helper fit for him. So the Lord caused a deep sleep to fall upon the man, and while he slept, took one of his ribs and closed up its place with flesh. And the rib that the Lord had taken from the man, he made into a woman and brought her to the man. And then the man said, this at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother, and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh.
So we see here that God wired us to speak purpose, in the fact that all through this passage, we see the man speaking purpose. God gave him opportunity to speak purpose into creation. He named the animals. Then, when God gave him his helper, the one who's perfectly fit for him, the one who would be the greatest teammate that he could have, he saw her and he said, "This is at last bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman." So the man called the woman who she was and spoke purpose into her. When you turn the page and you go into the next chapter where the temptation comes, the fall of man, Satan, the man, and the woman were given consequences for their sin. At the tail end of that story, something awesome happens. That even in adversity, even in challenges that they went through, the man then spoke redemptively about the purpose of his mate. We see in chapter 3, verse 20, the man called his wife's name Eve because she was mother of all living. Now remember, that was right after the struggle they just went through. That was right after there was some blame and shame that they went through. But the man saw his wife and said, "You have purpose, and I'm so thankful for you." As we go through the story, it's not just the man that speaks purpose, it's also the woman, right? In chapter 4, we see the woman speak purpose into her children as Eve names her children.
And I think we've all experienced that. For most of us, we're very intentional when we name our children, when we know they're coming to us in whatever form that is. And we think really considerately about what we want to call them. And even in that little act, we're putting in some purpose into their lives and who we want them to be, whether that's a family name or the significance behind the name that they have. All of that has a little bit to do to pour into their purpose.
So, what we see is that God wired you to speak purpose all the way back from the beginning. Marriage, family, the home, we were wired to speak purpose.
So, with all of that in mind, we want to start to move forward into taking some action with that. How do we actually start to speak our purpose? Let's get into some of the practical things.
So, we've got 3 ways we're going to look to remember how we speak purpose. Number 1, we're going to look back to see God's design. Number 2, we're going to look up to see God's gifting. And then number 3, we're going to look out to see God's assignment.
So, for this session, what we want you to work on are 3 specific things that we want you to kind of dig into, just like your Together story. The first thing is we're going to be looking at the meaning of our names. We're actually going to do a little homework and find out what our names mean, where they come from, and dig into the history of them. The second thing is we're going to look at our family history. So we're going to kind of break down where we've come from, who our parents were, who our family has been, and how that's influenced who we are. And then lastly, we're going to look at our specific God-given responsibilities, the things that we've done in our lives, the places that we've been, and specifically the roles and the duties that we have tended to assume and take on, and how that's sort of impacted who we are.
Now, part of this is going to be challenging. As you look back at your family history, especially, there might be some challenges there, but we encourage you to dig in and share with your spouse, share with those on your team in your home that you're working together on mission, and see if you can help each other as you work through those things. When you look at the meaning of your name, that's going to be very interesting to you. And then as you look at those responsibilities, I think that'll be eye-opening as well. So we encourage you to grab the guide that's included with this session, dig into those exercises together, and we'll see you back next time as we continue to learn what it means to live together on mission.